A very good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you on behalf of PRAI, Child Rights Anew, and Ran Thornton Bharat to this special event. It is truly inspiring to see so many of you who have gathered today for this unveiling of the report, Volunteering in India, Perspectives, Insights, and Potential for Social Impact, and the enriching panel discussion that will follow. This study, created in collaboration with GT Bharat, reflects a shared commitment to understanding the transformative potential of volunteering. As we navigate a rapidly changing world, it's so crucial to reflect on how volunteering serves not just an act of generosity, but perhaps as a pathway to building stronger, more committed communities. So, with this aim to inspire action, offer insights, and create a more inclusive ecosystem for volunteering in India, one that can address our pressing social challenges with resilience and compassion. We deeply value your attention to the discussions that's going to unfold today to ensure a smooth and focused flow. We encourage you to share your questions and observations via the Q&A box. Rest assured, we have set us some time aside to address and take note of as many of your inputs as possible. We are privileged to have an incredible lineup of speakers who are going to enrich our dialogue today. Professor Femida Handy from University of Pennsylvania, Anuradha Kedia, the co-founder of the Better India, Balakumar Thangovelu, India Head for Employee Volunteering and ESG at Cognizant, and Pooja Marwaha, CEO at CRY. Rohit Bahadur, partner at GT, will be introducing them duly and moderate the panel today. It is an absolute privilege to have you all with us. May I now invite the GT team in presence of the eminent panelists and the wonderful audience to unveil the report. This report embodies our collective vision for a thriving culture of volunteerism in India. Thank you so much once again. Can we kindly play the unveiling video, please? Thanks so much for sharing so much of love and appreciation. I request Pranjal Saxena from the GT team to get us into the report highlight section. Pranjal, over to you. And maybe I will just get started with the first one or two sections of it, but yes, the key findings will be Pranjal's. Can we have the presentation up on screen, please? Pranjal and I will be hosting this part of it before we land into the most exciting part, which is the panel discussion. Okay, so yes, here's the report, and we just thought of presenting to you a few snippets of what it has attempted to put forth. Can we move to the next slide? Before we get into the details of it, just to give you a quick sense of how the event will pan out, we will have the sharing now of the key findings and soon move into the panel discussion, which we are so eagerly looking forward to. Then we will take a few questions. So please do go ahead asking, sharing your thoughts in the Q&A. And then we should be able to wind up on time at around 5:50. Thanks so much. Okay, so can we just go back? We have a little question, and if we can have that up on screen, and please do play it, and let's see whether we have got the answer right. Can we have the first whole question? So yeah, there's nothing wrong or right about it. Just go ahead saying, when did you first volunteer? So the options are open for you. You can choose the one which goes with how it has been. Next few seconds, and let's see what are the responses showing us. Can we see the responses? Hopefully, most of you have chosen your option. Can we see what are we saying as an audience? Oh, no. Isn't that great? Pranjal has a big smile because our report somewhere also finds something very, very in tune with what you all are saying. In school, I think it's very positively surprising because we still find that maybe, there's a ground to cover there. But so isn't it so wonderful to see, majority, over 70% saying that you have started it in school or college? That's great. And thankfully, never volunteered is very insignificant. So that's also very heartening. Thank you so much for taking this with us. We can close it now and move ahead. So I will just give you a quick brief of why we thought of taking this up and decided to collaborate between CRY and GT on this. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is the premise. CRY and Grant Thornton Bharat decided to pick up this study. The key objectives were, primarily four things. The first one was that, what are the emerging trends? Because as I was saying, that volunteering in India is so rapidly changing and across the globe, that we became very curious at what are the trends that we can manage to tap and understand the changing perspectives or attitudes vis-a-vis volunteering. So that was the starting point. And quickly also looking at that, what are those factors which, leads to supporting continued volunteering and volunteer discontinuation? What are the key motivators or challenges? So if we can really go out and get it from people directly, that will be wonderful. Of course, while we are doing that, also gather a lot of rich insights from organizations and the sector who are heavily invested in this space, and what are they seeing and what are they experiencing, also primarily, to look at that. And of course, in the process, look at the diversity which it throws up, because in a country like India, to just understand the variations and the realities across different age groups, geographies, will really help us think of what's the way ahead. So these four things were most important when we thought of taking this up. We can move to the next slide, please. So quickly before the finding section comes in and Pranjal takes over, what we decided about how do we go about was that we will sort of take up a mixed method approach, which is a combination of quantitative surveys and qualitative interviews and focus group discussions. So that was our primary method and approach to go about. So one was the data sources. So we extensively scanned through secondary pieces of data and research notes and documents to understand that which are those data points or trends we are missing and what perhaps this study can attempt to cover. And also develop questionnaires which were, research ethics wise vetted by concerned teams. And the primary data collection was undertaken through online surveys and qualitative interviews with stakeholders to supplement the findings which were taken in terms of quantitative. In terms of sample size, it was pretty ambitious. We managed to reach over 5,500 respondents. So that's very big. And the happier part of that was just not the numbers, but more that the respondents represented 100 plus cities and towns in India, with a conscious focus on tier 2, tier 3 cities as well, because often our understanding is restricted to the metros we live in, and covering 22 states, where we undertook and used all these tools across these geographies, age groups, and professions to bring to you what Pranjal is going to show us. So, Pranjal, over to you. Tell us what the findings are.
Thank you, Anupama. Very good afternoon. I hope I'm audible. Right. Can we move to the next slide? Right. So as Anupama has already sort of set the context about the study, I'll quickly jump into some of the crucial findings, some of the snippets. While there are many factors that we evaluated and we've come across a lot of findings from ground during our interactions when the team interacted with students, their parents, teachers, a lot of homemakers, senior citizens, and so on and so forth. I think we have the breakup, and interestingly, we have findings across each stakeholder. All right, can we move to the next slide, please? Great. I think Anupama rightly pointed out, there was a wide smile on my face when the poll results came in. And primarily because, if you see across the study, we have some very interesting mix of students representing and coming from school and colleges. While the numbers are on the screen, I wanted to sort of highlight on what are the focus areas of these students who are ranging from almost about 15 years to say 22, 23 years of age. And when looking at about 60% of these participants who were respondents to our questionnaires, our interactions on ground, the detailed discussions that we had, I think one of the key features that we largely see in a sort of a corporate world and in the professional setup is reward and recognition. A lot of these students at their age, while they're working, they're doing some internship, they're reading their courses, towards their effort and towards their efforts in volunteering, they would want some sense of recognition, because I think that is something that really takes them to the next pedestal when in terms of trying to go out for higher studies or explore new avenues. So this is something which strongly came up from the ground across tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And the numbers also suggest so. Over 60% of the students really focuses on getting certain sort of recognition and incentivization towards their efforts on volunteering. I think it's interesting to see how post-COVID world and the interests of these students have changed. So from just volunteering into certain activities to moving into a skill-based, specialized activity and sort of a support, whether it is at a school level or at a college level, university level, is something that has come up big time. And these are some of the key buzzwords that we've seen across during our interactions. Capacity building, again, it's one of the very crucial areas, because while tier 1, like Anupama said, a lot of these students and younger college going people, they have that orientation. Tier 2 and tier 3 students, typically they feel there is a gap wherein they can build upon the skill sets and further contribute towards the society. I would like to also sort of highlight one of the experiences from the ground, wherein few of the students, they actually highlighted how they have a lot of time but not resources, and therefore they would want to utilize that time to build upon, get capacitated, and therefore contribute. And it's an interesting mix, because at the same time, when we talk to working professionals, they have paucity of time but they do have resources. So it's an interesting mix of how this pendulum sort of swings from students to working professionals, and we see how they want both these stakeholders, both these players, they would really look at capacity building to keep themselves honing up. Right. I think with regards to source of information about volunteering, it's interesting to see how social media has played about an important role, particularly to tier 1 and tier 2 students coming from tier 2 towns. Most of the respondents that we sort of catered to when we interacted came from tier 1 and tier 2 across the 22 states and union territories of the country. Right. I think lastly, if I look at how students would want to sort of volunteer, is primarily now driven because of the COVID initiatives that the global, I mean, it has become a global phenomenon where a mix of hybrid and online and offline opportunities are to be seen. And we've seen during our interaction, people are interested, students are interested in short-term, high-impact volunteering efforts. So this is something that they would really want to, sort of express themselves, explore, and going forward, be a part of it. Can we move to the next slide? Right. So just to give you an overall themes, I think this is largely what their expectation sort of summarizes into. They're looking at building their confidence and self-esteem through some sort of recognition and rewards or maybe incentivization. Uh, Communication and leader skills is something that has come a big time with the students, largely coming from college and universities. And then we have a mix of technical skill sets. Some of the people who would really want to contribute into this sector, looking at opportunities, employment opportunities, definitely networking, because this is one forum where they feel that they can interact with people coming from diverse backgrounds, experiences, age groups, and get to learn and unlearn a lot about their own lives. And then we have personal satisfaction, which I feel we just started with the same note. It's not just about accepting and giving it, but how we want to also shape it up. Right. Can we move to the next slide? Yeah, this is one of the snippets of the student who is from Delhi, which is a tier 1 town, and largely, sort of reflects on the findings that we have, wherein they're trying to understand, they're trying to know certain skill sets which are beyond what they're taught in classrooms or maybe in the books, and develop a real world experience so that when they are out in the world, they have some sort of connect, and then they can actually apply those skill sets into practice. Please move to the next slide. Right. So students moving into the next phase of life brings them to working professionals, certainly a space where most of us who are present on this call belong to. And this is where I think things get a bit trickier. While we do have the intent to work, explore our interest and support the communities, people we would want to spend time with in any which ways, but there are certain challenges that we have seen, particularly with the working professionals. One of them being the time constraint, given their professional commitments, and also how the source of information about volunteering or being a part of an organization or an initiative sort of triggers their action and helps them or maybe supports their decision making. If you look at the overall gender mix, I think we have roughly about 40 to 60% of split across female and men. And then if I come to the focus areas, particularly in terms of how the volunteers, how the professionals would want to volunteer, is something again very similar to what students sort of reflected upon, which is over 50% of the people would want to volunteer through a hybrid mode. And given the time, paucity, limitation, or maybe their commitments and family commitments, their involvement would typically range from a day or few hours in a day to almost a week. That's where most of the respondents would fall in. So what we understand from this and what we really factored while we were on the ground is there are very few working professionals who would really want to continue in a long-term commitment. And these are some of the areas where organizations like CRY and other organizations working in the domain and an MNC like a GT can actually come around with a model and see how professionals who are bringing in certain skill set, expertise area can, sort of collaborate, provide that platform for people to go out, explore, and help the communities in any which ways they can, to be able to provide that support. Right. Particularly in India, we have seen a lot of these CSR initiatives are now being aligned to or with volunteering activities, wherein we see corporates moving down as a part of their company strategy, spending time with, communities on ground, maybe animal welfare. It could be student, wherein they're teaching themselves or mentoring, kids for sports sessions, and there are many such examples. But what we have realized is a lot of these corporates and bigger organizations, they really rely on some trustworthy organization, because there are many organizations. However, their connect is because there are certain fundamental vision and ethos of an organization that has to sort of come in play when they're collaborating with NGOs. And therefore, being a trustworthy organization is something that they're out and out exploring and trying to build certain platforms there. A lot of people, yes, definitely, it's an interesting finding for us when it comes to workshops or skill building. it is generally seen that, professionals would go onto the ground, would connect with organizations and then try to support them. But it was interesting to see, even at their age, their commitment, they would want to improve their skills and grow professionally through volunteering activities. So while I am a management consultant, I may want to understand some of the other skill sets which probably a volunteering opportunity can provide. So I can probably get certain insights from Anupama on how she works across in the development sector. And these are some real-time insights coming from, the top management of the corporates. And we're talking about top 500 Fortune companies, working in and around the country. So this reflects that people in the age band of about 25 to 50, 55 years of age still have the hunger to, improve, not just from a business perspective, but the fact that they want to volunteer, they want to bring in something new and be alive in the market. So these are some of the crucial areas that we could find, we could sort of understand through, our study. And just to highlight on how the mix of their education, I think that's on the screen, about 40 to 30% of the participants were from bachelor's and master's background. So I think that also really helps in time in understanding how their academic training supports or maybe motivates them to take a sort of action and decision in volunteering. Right. Can we move to the next slide, please? Right. Again, one of the many respondents that we interacted with, uh, shared their experience of how they enjoy teaching students and learning and giving it back to them, because there is some sense of fulfillment, and it's the time commitment given to the students or to the kids at school that really helps the community grow, and they have seen it in real life. I think we are at a juncture where post COVID, a lot of changes have happened and people have seen it firsthand. So there are small initiatives during the lockdown of teaching students online or maybe interacting with them, speaking to them, mentoring them, has really taken them to the next, stage in terms of their personal growth, and has also allowed them to see how the transformation on ground to the ones that they really interacted with or connected with has helped them grow as well. Right. Please move to the next slide. Right. So third stakeholder, interestingly, was homemakers, while major focus, obviously, and a lot of the respondents were working professionals and students coming from schools and colleges. We also wanted to understand how homemakers across tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 really look at the concept of volunteering. Do they really understand what volunteering is in true sense? And it's interesting to see how some of the very, very finer or minute, insights came in, which is something, very coherent and adhesive in the sense of the community building that we see. When we were on the ground, when the team was on the ground, we were interacting with homemakers. It was interesting to learn that they still attribute the community cohesiveness that we see in the rural setting in India right now and associate that to volunteering. For example, when we interacted with somebody from the Far East in Nagaland, they shared how they celebrate festivals and how they contribute to social gatherings like weddings or birthdays. It's not just one person who's getting married or has a birthday, it's the entire village coming in, they're preparing meals, they're supporting them with decorations and stuff, and to them that is the idea of volunteering, whether it is at an individual level, at a community level, or at a larger level, at a village or a district level. And the major driver, or let's say the driving force in this, is the homemakers. So if you see how this has shaped the responses or the thought process behind the overall idea of homemakers getting to know what volunteering is or expressing themselves, is roles which are very close to them. They've been doing it for years and years. They have a very close knit of circle, whether it is family, friends, and then they try to interact and build that whole network of their own. I think this is how the whole word of mouth piece of around doing certain good initiatives, whether it is taking elderly care, whether it is teaching kids, whether it is simply taking care of the environment, planting trees, all of them put together, coming in close knit circles. And this is where the willingness has come up, because for them there is something new which they are doing outside of the regular life that they have. Certainly they were very I mean, the kind of uh, background that they came in and the kind of geographic responses we have got, the representation from geographies, I think they lack the technical and communication skills. So this is something that they would also want to hone during their initial engagement in on any of the volunteering sort of initiative. Right. Can we move to the next? Right. And lastly, we had the fourth category, which is the senior citizens over 60 years of age, both, male and female. I think there are certain questions popping up. Just a sec. Right. Yes, I think this is a very interesting mix, particularly given the kind of society we come in as a country, where post 60 life is seen as, life of leisure. You take your own time, do things for yourself. And now we have seen how, again, I think post COVID things have changed to a larger extent, where people above 60 years of age would also want to contribute, whether it is just spending time with people, their peers, learning about how and what interests people of the younger generation, experience sharing of what they've done in their life, what they've achieved, and how it could, really help and build the younger generations to, sort of come up. And then, do the mentoring or be mentors to, the students, to working professionals, or maybe their friends. So it's I think they're trying to wear multiple hats there because of the wisdom and experience they bring in. So they have the desire to work across, support them, but certainly because of the physical movements and their health conditions, they prefer doing a lot more in terms of hybrid. And this is primarily coming from, tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 3, again, it's more like a gray area for them, because to them there's nothing. The concept of volunteering is very innate to their own, lifestyle there, and hence, they would want to continue with the same. Right. Can we move to the next section, please? Yeah. Can we just move ahead? Right. I think this is something we wanted to bring about and wanted to share with the larger audience that we have today. And I would request and urge everyone to actually go through the in-depth finding that we have in the in the report, because there are many associated factors and not just one or two primary motivating factors, but across all the stakeholders. Right. So for students, most certainly it is about exploring career opportunities, increasing their self-confidence, feel loved, feel compassionate, know more about the cause, which is only seen in, the student stakeholder category. We did not come across learning about the cause, trying to know about the fitment of why would somebody want to do a particular activity or associate themselves in other stakeholders. There were very few responses which said, oh yes, we would want to understand more. Out there, it was more about learning and honing their skills and then supporting and going back. So I think these are very interesting mix of, what motivates students at what age. And I think I'm recalling what some of the theories in sociology suggest. Okay, when you're in that phase of life, when you're building yourself very young, I think if you're able to tap on some of the moral values, ethics, it really puts you on that right track. And then we can certainly expect them to continue for a longer period. We came across people who are into their 60s who have continued to volunteer for almost for over a period of 20, 30 years now. And they started very young back into school and colleges. And if I reflect back to the poll question, almost 65 to 70% of the people who are available and who are present on this call, they actually said that they started volunteering in school or college. So there is that innate connection, and we have to now, through our findings, through our study, come about with a platform or model that really allows people to explore themselves and continue further. Right. Can we move to the next screen, because there's already a lot of buzzwords that we wanted to touch base, and I think this is where we can all now reflect and look at honesty, which is something we talked about in terms of corporates looking at trustworthy organizations, individuals relying on honest feedback, honest conversations, honest, support that an organization or a firm can provide while they're, providing any volunteering services. Positive attitude and passion is something that came out very loud across the three stakeholders, which is students, working professionals, and homemakers, most certainly. Senior citizens is a very different ballgame because they already have seen a lot of their life and they have experience. So hence, positive attitude to them is a very natural and organic offering. But students, working professionals, and homemakers, we see a mix of how students have the positive attitude, they have passion towards it, and how working professionals, they're passionate about it, but they may not have the time to be able to contribute in that form and shape. And then therefore we see how work ethics, enthusiasm, the ability to try out new things across multiple stakeholders that we interacted with. And these are very strong numbers. While it seems like 41, 30%, when we try to put that into perspective, we interacted with close to 6,000 people across the country. So we're technically speaking in about more than 2,000, 1,500 odd respondents across different categories. So these are very strong numbers, very strong forces coming from the ground, suggesting that there is a dire need of some, or not just some, multiple platforms to come across where people from different backgrounds, from different places can come together and co-create a model and support each other. Right. I think I'll take a bit of a pause here and request all of us to sort of think through and invite Anupama again to further take it ahead. Yeah.
Thanks, Pranjal. I hope it has created some enough excitement and curiosity to delve into the report, which, as Pranjal was saying, covers many of these things in detail. Quickly moving on, because we are equally excited about the panel discussion, which is going to come up now. The report also delves into a dedicated section on hence what we do. If you're observing certain things as macro realities, or what people are saying at large, within that these subsegments who are throwing up very interesting and relevant insights for us. What is that perhaps people who are interested to work around volunteering already are doing or are trying to level up may get better ideas about how do we chalk out our way ahead. So quickly moving on to the next slide. Some certain general recommendations which we have attempted to put forth. One is that, of course, the interest in the formats of something online, something convenient and I can manage along with my busy life, or something I can do online. So optimizing the use of digital channels and platforms, especially for organizations who are working with volunteers or are interested to engage volunteers, that this digital engagement has to be really strengthened, and we have to put more focus on understanding how that may work to the advantage of the organizations who are willing to engage volunteers, and also for volunteers to find something which is meaningful, at the same time convenient for them to find out those opportunities. The second bit, especially with youngsters and also with working professionals, that interest in skill development and also getting acknowledged. So integrating that part of it into structured skill development pathways. So while we are really wanting them to get involved in the causes they deeply feel passionate about, but also being mindful that how skill development can be plugged into those opportunities, which will boost volunteer satisfaction. The third part is flexibility. Again, juggling too many things, we cannot ignore the fact that nowadays people are committing to a lot of things which interest them. If we make options too rigid and too, watertight, then it limits our opportunities to engage with diverse sort of people. So introducing these diverse volunteering options within whatever work we are doing and accommodating those, varied preferences, so that it can appeal to, broad segments of people who will find some piece of it which immediately relates to them, and it makes it possible for them to volunteer. The fourth is, of course, the value alignment and cultural fit. Every organization stands and holds certain values very closely to the cause they stand for. So aligning that with the volunteers' intrinsic motivation, we saw through a few where what they hold precious when they are looking at volunteering work, how the both can be blended together to foster sort of a belonging and commitment. And in fact, if we say more of ownership about what they are, that would be so, so critical to be considered and factored in. And yes, volunteering becomes much more richer when we make it more consciously more inclusive. Because as a society, at times we feel that things are getting very homogenized. So there, recognizing and harnessing the diversity and the contributions of people from different segments, different marginalized groups, and people from, people with disabilities or LGBTQI communities, and people belonging to lower socioeconomic strata, how we can involve their involvement and action into the volunteering space we are talking about. A lot of conscious efforts are needed to make that happen. Quickly moving to the near final slide. Next slide, please. And then we attempted certain specific recommendations, which also comes in vis-a-vis certain focus segments we were talking about in terms of community development and capacity building and professional adaptation. So for students, having short-term options, which are flexible and interesting, will really work. For senior citizens, that sort of, strengthen the community outreach, because that's where they feel more comfortable or they discover the volunteering opportunities. Or for working professionals, developing very targeted campaigns which addresses, we were looking at a gender sort of disparity when we were working, sort of reaching out to working professionals, that how do we make it more accessible and doable for different segments within these, occupations to engage more wholeheartedly to volunteering. In terms of capacity building, there is always that looking forward to skills, perspectives, very customized roles which goes on with their experience or expertise. So when it comes to senior citizens, roles of mentoring or teaching is something close to their heart. When they are young people, they're looking at something which will also in the process enhance their skills. Or for working professionals, anything which sort of aligns well with their interest and skill sets, and they would want to put it into good use. And where do we, make it happen is, sort of looking at that students are so curious about career guidance, and how do we integrate that into volunteering programs through events and through workshops and through different sorts of networking. For senior citizens, of course, looking at their schedules or preferences or conveniences, and for working professionals to partner more with educational institutions and preferred sectors where they can really see their skills and interests being put into good use. On that note, we come towards the end. Can we move on to the next slide? So as we conclude, and I know we are all excitedly looking forward to the panel discussion now, there is one little question we would again want to put up on screen, and let's see how aware we are, or do we remember this? This is the most recent World Giving Index report which had come out, and had 140 countries participating. And where do you think there were different sub-parameters? Where do you think India ranks on volunteering? So please go ahead. I hope our fingers are moving fast, so do not hesitate, and let's see how close we are to the right answer. Okay, we can show the results. Okay, so it's not that bad. I'm happy actually looking at this because India ranks 18. So 22% of the audience here have answered it correctly. We are doing fairly well. In actual numbers, there is an increasing trend of people considering volunteering, which is such a positive news. Of course, we have miles to go, but it's definitely not that it's 74th rank. So we should have some little exciting things for ourselves about. Perhaps we are on the right track. You can check the message box. There's something put in there. So we can take it off. And And now I think with bated breath, what we were awaiting. So I hope you really enjoyed and really picked up certain things which gets you thinking about the key findings. Of course, the report has far more detail and we will pass it on. I hand it over to Rohit now to start off with a panel discussion with our wonderful panelists who have joined us today.
Thank you, Anupama, and trust you, you're bang on time. I think you've just cut into 2 minutes of my time. But that's pretty fantastic. So before I start off on the panel discussion, I'd really like to express my heartfelt thanks to CRY for nudging us at Grant Thornton. We are an organization with over 10,000 employees across India, and of course, we have a large global network. And I hope this report can motivate us not only in India but across the globe. And I hope this report can be a message to the entire section which can actually potentially go ahead, put their hands together, maybe in a little more structured manner, so that eventually we can make some impact on ground. So it's really an exciting moment for all of us. Thank you so much. And with bated breath, and with great pride, I go ahead and introduce and welcome the diverse set of panelists that we have today. Thank you so much for joining us in this very engaging discussion. You would have seen that the reports has given us some insights, and primarily, in the context of India. So we are looking forward to different perspectives to build on what we found during our study. And we are looking to also getting some perspectives, some global perspectives, some from the corporate world, and of course, hearing further from CRY as to what their experiences have been, having deeply engaged in volunteering across so many years. I will introduce each panelist, just before I ask the question. So I'm going ahead and introducing Anuradha. Anuradha, welcome, to the panel. Anuradha Kedia, for the audience, is and for all of us, is a civil engineer, an ISB Business School graduate, and has co-founded Better India, a platform that is dedicated to positive stories and solutions-driven journalism, earning recognition of becoming the most influential voice for the development sector. So welcome, Anuradha. And
thank you, Rohit. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great. So the last poll question really touched upon, the World Giving Index, and we've noticed that while India stands pretty high on that World Giving Index, there has been a little dip as well, etc. Right? So what we would like to hear from you is what drives people to align with social good in general, right? Which includes volunteering. And how does volunteering then fit into this entire behavior of wanting to attach to social good?
Absolutely. Thank you, first of all, for having me on this panel. And what a wonderful discussion and report it has been. Very insightful, very, I would say, eye-opening. And like Anupama said, we are not doing so bad. So that was a real pleasure to see. India isn't doing so bad. And having founded the Better India about 15 years ago, and running this in the development space, all of these years, our own observations align very much with a lot of the findings in the report, right? From the basic premise, I would say at the heart of it, every human being wants to do good, wants to create meaning beyond oneself, right? When we started the Better India, we felt there was so much emphasis on the negative aspects of, the nation. And when we start talking about positive initiatives, positive change, what change makers, the kind of small and large initiatives that everyone's taking in their own small ways, and volunteering forms such a large part of that. We felt that there was such a space to create inspiring news that showcases, small initiatives that people can become a part of. Right. I think India's cultural fabric itself has always celebrated giving, from the concept of seva to bhiksha to modern volunteering efforts. Right. There may not be, not everyone may be able to volunteer time or money or whatever it is, but people do contribute in whatever small ways that they can, whether it's efforts, skills, times, whatever that people can contribute, right? So volunteering is such a powerful concept, since it taps into two very powerful human motivators as well, which is agency and connection. Right? What people want to see is how their actions ripple outwards, whether it is mentoring a child or cleaning a park. It fuels a sense of accomplishment that is contagious. Once you have volunteered, you will, it is such a heady feeling, you will want to do it again and again, right? So that's the kind of the feeling of accomplishment, having done something with your time, having created something meaningful, is what people really look for, right? At the Better India, we've seen this firsthand. Stories like those of college students transforming lives of slum dwellers, or just cleaning up a section of the park, or urban women teaching digital literacy to their rural counterparts. All of these kind of stories inspire readers and ignite the spark for participation. So what we have realized over these years is that volunteering isn't just about giving back. It's about shaping an identity tied to purpose, which is what every single person aspires to.
Wonderful, Anuradha, and I think that resonates with so many of us. And I think the mental well-being and the positiveness that volunteering has to an individual, irrespective of the age. I think that needs to be promoted more, and I guess that's something which you've alluded to so brilliantly. So thank you so much for that. My next question is to Professor Famida Hande, and I'd like to briefly introduce Professor. Thank you, Professor, for joining us, all the way from across the globe. Professor Hande is the Professor of Social Policy at the School of Social Policy and Practice at the University of Pennsylvania. And her research and teaching focus has been on the economics of the non-for-profit sector, volunteering, and philanthropy. Very recently, she has co-authored a book, which is Ethical Decision Making for Social Impact, and very, very impressive. Thank you so much, Professor Hande, for joining us. I believe it's very early in the morning for you, and we are immensely, grateful for you to have joined us and to contribute to this very engaging discussion that we're having. So we've done sort of a deep dive, and my colleagues and fellow I would say volunteers at CRY have actually given the audience some snippets of what potentially is volunteering and what are the practices in India, what are some of the challenges. What we would like to sort of hear that, volunteering, of course, is a long-standing practice, not only in India, but across the globe. What we would be very eager to know is what are some of the key global trends in volunteering. And if there are some positive aspects of that we can mirror, and build, into some of the trends that we are seeing in India.
Thank you. First of all, I'm honored to be here and really delighted to be part of this very esteemed panel for the inaugural of this report on volunteering that is really so comprehensive and captures a country, a very vast country with so many different cultures and so many different states. So first of all, bravo to CRY and Grant Thornton for taking on this challenge, because we have for a long time wanted to know statistics on volunteering and giving in India. And so thank you for doing this very impressive report. Of course, I'm delighted to speak about a topic that I've been passionate in studying, even though it's very, very early in the morning over here. So to your question on what are some of the key trends, well, one of the most dramatic changes in volunteering over the last 3 or 4 decades has been virtual volunteering. So there are many, many platforms across the world where remote opportunities are increasing and leveraging platforms to allow individuals to contribute in any which way they can, whether it's from tutoring, from translating, and also allows people now from living in remote areas to participate. Also people with physical disabilities. So we're able to get in the marginalized communities that Annapurna was speaking about into volunteering through remote volunteering and virtual volunteering. So the integration of technology has been very interesting. AI and blockchain are now being utilized for matching volunteers to opportunities, and blockchain sort of accounts for their accountability and contribution of their contribution hours. Like you said earlier on, that it's important to be recognized. Everybody wants to be recognized. You know, you do anything and you want somebody to appreciate you. And so keeping track of people's hours and making sure they get appreciated is becoming easier through technology. And I expect that all volunteer coordinators and managers are now very familiar with the technologies that are being used to do it. For example, there's iVolunteers, a mobile app, which maybe some of you are familiar with, and its goal is to create 7 billion volunteers across the globe. So they want everybody to be able to participate in some kind of projects in your in person, in your location, or online. And a lot of tasks of volunteering have moved from the very traditional volunteering that we knew about, people going for 3 hours a week every Monday to do some kind of task, to very small micro volunteering. So people are constrained with time, family, work responsibilities, and even health conditions. So short, very flexible tasks like patchwork volunteers. It engages various nonprofits, including Pathfinders, senior citizen assistants during different life phases. They call engagement hoppers, people who participate on an ad hoc basis, guided by their availability and the demand for their services. Like in refugee aid or disaster aid, we know volunteers turn up to help. There's crowdsourcing of volunteers. They perform online microtasks or open source contributions when they either in the environmental space or even in educational space. And in some countries, this kind of micro volunteering and informal volunteering, we're not always doing it through a nonprofit or an NGO, is actually suppressing the very formal volunteering that we used to account for. And so we are also, as researchers, becoming aware that our statistics on volunteering are very much determined by the questions we ask. Because until now, we had asked for questions about, do you volunteer through a formal organization? Well, life has changed. In the last few decades, people have decided to go out on their own, help each other in ways that are not necessarily through an NGO like CRY, but they might be just through their neighbors or their local community or in a senior citizen home that may not be a registered NGO, for example. There is also gamification. You know, people are using point systems to give recognition or to redeem some rewards for people who are volunteering. So they're kind of leaderboards. More interestingly, since CSR has become sort of mandatory in India, I see that a lot of companies are turning towards engaging the employees in doing part of the CSR that is now being mandated. And I think even companies where it's not mandated, the idea of employee engagement in volunteer projects has boomed across the world, because they found they not only make for better employees, but they make for better people and happier people, and people feel much more connected to their organization when they can do things that are outside their purview of, work. And so there's social media advocacy. So that's in a platform where a lot of volunteering is happening, that are crucial for recruiting and raising awareness. So nonprofits can use this as interactive tools like live events, like what we're doing today, videos to engage audiences and so on. So there's all kind of it. And what I really like to see, and that's a point you also talked about, is inclusive volunteering, because there's so many benefits to volunteering, which I can go on in a later panel question, that when you leave out certain populations from volunteering, you're really discriminating against them in both ways. They don't enhance their skills, they're not able to give back, but they also don't have the benefits from volunteering. So there should be a stronger focus on really reducing kind of barriers, promoting diversity, and tailoring certain opportunities to contexts that would encourage participation from these. So that's my short answer
Thank you.
to your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Hande. I think it, very interesting insights about how one can potentially include, stuff like gamification, etc., AI and technology. And of course, we all would like to see everybody volunteer, right? Not just youth or not just the working population, but we would really like volunteering to become extremely inclusive. So thank you so much for that. I would like to welcome our next panelist, which is Balakumar Thangavelu. Welcome, sir. Balakumar is the Director CSR. He is also the India head, outreach, employee volunteering, and the global lead ESG for Cognizant. So welcome, sir. Thank you so much for making time, and joining us for this discussion. Mr. Balakumar, heads, the outreach platform, which is Cognizant's employee volunteering program in India, and very impressive because it spans across 13 cities and 7 states in India. And Bala has also, recently co-authored a book, 101 Impactful Ways to Volunteer. And we would be very interested in actually reading your book, sir. So thank you so much. Would like to sort of understand from you that the corporate sector, plays a very important and active role in sort of volunteering. What approaches in corporate volunteering have proven to be purposeful, for societal change and for responsible business practices? So just some context of how corporate volunteering has created some positive change. And if you can kind of make reference to the CSR law, and if that has had any impetus in any change that you see, that will be really wonderful for us and the audience to understand.
Thank you, Mr. Rohit, for having me in this panel, and a big thanks to CRY and Grant Thornton for putting up this event. Tomorrow being International Day of Volunteering, it makes more sense to have this, discussion today and publishing the report on the volunteering perspectives for India. Very, very well thought through. The highlights were really exciting, and quite excited to read the full report. Being somebody who has been into volunteering for almost 2 decades now, it's quite exciting to see the number and read the report. So with that, at the corporate world, right, how things work, and that's something that I think you're wanting me to share some thoughts. Going back to Anuradha's point, right? We all strongly believe that everybody has a heart to give back to society, but not everybody knows when to give, where to give, and how to give. And that's what all of us are trying to put together a framework or a model or a place for everybody to come out and give back to the community. So I would like to quote a type of volunteers that was coined by Chris Jarvis, who is from an organization called Realized Worth. So he claims volunteers are of three types: tourists, travelers, and guides. So tourists, right, like they just come to a place, wants to explore what is there and what's happening. And similar to that, there are employees in a corporate world, or like just like that, volunteers, right? I'm referring to Cognizant as such, right? We have volunteers who want to come explore what's happening in a school volunteering, what's happening in an environment volunteering, what's happening in a special children volunteering event. So there are like tourists who come, just witness there, be there, and then go away. And then there are travelers, so who know where they are heading towards and who know what is happening there. I want to contribute something towards education, so I'll keep going to an education institution to contribute. And then the third type of volunteer is guides. So once they know where they are going, they become the experts. So they'll start becoming a lighthouse, or they becoming the guides, helping the tourists and travelers to become guides. So in an corporate world, that's something that like we strongly believe that one size doesn't fit all. So we have tourists, travelers, and guides, and there are so many people, like Professor Handy was telling, as well as Anuradha was telling. I don't know. I don't have time to come out and give back my skills or technology or my talent. Probably I can give some money. So one size doesn't fit all. In a corporate world, we try to bring in all opportunities for them. And that's how at Cognizant also, we have promoted different forms of volunteering and different varieties of volunteering opportunities under like two focus areas: of supporting inclusion in tech and giving back to community. So with that, volunteers, knowing that one size doesn't fit all, we have a variety of opportunities, and we keep giving variety of promotional activities also for them to come and experience and then expert. And how it has reflected in terms of the organization, right? Who benefits in volunteering? That's a question. Like thanks, Mr. Rohit, for pointing out the book that I co-authored. So in that, like one section talks about who benefits in a volunteering activity, right? It's the individual who volunteers. So the first beneficiary in volunteering is the individual who volunteers, and then comes the actual receiving person. So we see people in a corporate world who volunteer grow heights in a much faster manner. They develop empathy, they become empathetic leaders, they show empathy within the peers, and they become the best of the best employees. And there is a study that we did for like 5 years of data, people who volunteered versus people who have not volunteered in a corporate world. And this particular people who set of people who have volunteered have developed a lot more stickiness and emotional bonding with the organization, and there is 11% lower exit rate than people who have not volunteered. So people establish a bonding with the company. So if you see, it reflects in every activity, in interaction with a client, in interaction with the peers, everywhere that empathy prevails, and they become better citizens and better human being when they start volunteering. So that's how volunteering as an individual to reflecting in the business practices corporate we have done. And last, some fact that if I have to share, at Cognizant, we are a 3.5 lakh, 3.5 lakh employees around the world. And in India, we have 2.5 lakh employees. Year over year, we have close to 50 to 60,000 people volunteer and give back to community. Around 1.5 lakh hours of volunteering happens in Cognizant. And with that, I'll pause here for follow-on discussions that to come. Thank you.
That's really amazing to know the quantum of volunteering that is being done at Cognizant. And I also strongly feel that it will be things like volunteering and things like mindfulness, etc., which will build empathetic leaders. And empathetic leaders are the way forward, within the corporate world, because the way leadership is shaping is going to definitely undergo a huge change. going
Very true.
forward. So thank you so much, for your insights there. I'd like to introduce Pooja, and actually Pooja needs no introduction. She's been such an integral part of volunteering, CRY, and this report. I would like to introduce her. She is the CEO of CRY. She's also somebody who's shifted from the corporate sector, to the development sector, and believes that children are the foundation of every nation's growth and development aspirations. She serves on the academic advisory board of several academic institutes as well. Has been a TEDx speaker, and I can go on and on. Pooja, we are all very keen to know. I know CRY has been so integrally involved, in volunteering. So we would all like to know a little bit about CRY's history and how CRY has been engaging with volunteers for the last 45 years. Could you share something with us, please?
Absolutely. Yes, Rohit, thank you so much. Before I start about that, just incredibly honored to be part of this wonderful panel and listen to so many different perspectives. And we are really, really pleased to have partnered with GT in this seminal work. CRY was created by volunteers. The first 10 years was literally people offering their homes, offering their time. Nobody could afford any salaries. So, people had stories in the first 10 years of literally, you would go to office and in the lunchtime, you would run up and down your building in Nariman Point selling cards. And more than that, I think from the first day, as an organization, there was a huge pull to believe that people would do, that they would give, and that we could harness this huge potential. So I know that even today, it is amazing when I meet people of a certain age group who will talk about how their first volunteering experience was always fundraising for CRY in their school or in selling cards. So this volunteering has changed as in fact the organization professionalized after the first 10 years. This thing of all employees being volunteers changed. But what volunteers did has been, it has been amazing. I sometimes, the mind boggles at the kinds of things people have done. From starting CRY in another country, to spreading awareness, to just coming in and helping us design a software, design a campaign, do some very, hard work on, let's say, putting together data, right? Helping us crunch data, bringing a variety of sort of gamut of skills to things. I know people have talked to me about getting up at 4 in the morning, going down to, where the newspapers would be for the day and putting in CRY leaflets. Yeah. So it has changed so much over the years. We've seen in the 1990s and early
I think a slight bandwidth issue at Pooja's end. So we'll continue with Pooja's discussion, and I'd like to move on, again with the follow-on question. This is for Balakumar. Balakumar, we are also very keen to know whether micro volunteering has gained popularity, in a corporate context, because this is one of our findings from our report that 50% of the working professionals prefer to volunteer for less than once a week, right? So is that something which you see as a trend which is going to continue, and how do you feel that is it a positive trend, or do you see, that you would like a shift into something which is more longer term and sustainable?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Rohit, for this question. Yeah, the report reflects what's prevailing as well in the corporate world. Micro volunteering is on the trend, and I personally see this micro volunteering is a feeder for long-term volunteering. So we need to have micro volunteering opportunities for people to experience volunteering. The moment they experience, right, that's when they come into the journey of volunteering. So, and the reason behind is multiple other aspects. One is there's a lot of work pressure, and people are into work, and they say like, I'm not able to move out, and weekends I need my time, my personal time. But while I'm at office, if I'm able to contribute something, please let me know. So, and this generation Z, the Insta Reels culture, instant gratification, like the 2 minutes Maggie, we need instant gratification is expected, and all of that is there. We also have to a little bit change the trend and also bring in volunteering opportunities, which is micro, which is very probably less than 30 minutes. So we have started promoting less than 15 minutes volunteering. So you have 15 minutes of your time, you can just make a difference in this world. So we do a lot of virtual volunteering opportunities that we create, where you don't even have to move out of your desk. Sit from wherever you are, connect to platforms, and then contribute. So you have multiple opportunities like audiobook recording for visually impaired. They just have to sit, record a book. We give a one-pager document. They just audio record it, upload into a platform. It helps for visually impaired children. Or we give a kit of tactile cards to them. They make tactile cards, which helps again visually impaired students too. They don't have to move out of their desk. And we take them to the platform called Zooniverse, which offers a variety of opportunities in terms of researching fossil fuels, helping research in breast cancer, multiple other aspects in terms of visual impairment. So this Zooniverse is a platform that we capitalize for this micro volunteering, uh, you know, uh, opportunities for us. So these are like, this is the trend. And like I said, like these tourists, right, not the travelers and guides, these tourists needs this micro volunteering opportunities. And probably if I get an opportunity to talk in a follow-on question, I wanted to share a journey of volunteer, and in that, like I wanted to a little bit emphasize on that. So I'll keep this response short. Micro volunteering is the trend. A lot of people need that experience, and we also have to give that, and we have a variety of ways to do it, and we are doing it, and we are seeing a difference.
Wonderful. That's
Sorry,
interesting. I think,
Rohit. I
yeah,
tried to now log in from my phone. Hopefully this will
great.
work.
Yeah, great. So Pooja, we just wrapping up another question, and I wasn't sure whether would you like to continue with your narrative, or would you like to
Yeah,
come back in
I'd
at a
just
later
like to,
stage?
I just actually just want to make a couple of points, which was when I was listening to the professor as well. This is exactly what we've seen in the last 6 years. The trend of online volunteering has grown. The desire to volunteer online, to sort of sometimes be a social media warrior, But I just wanted to say that for organizations like us, this is incredibly powerful because, when you're doing a campaign, it is thousands of volunteers who can help you with that. So what we've seen is that while people have changed sometimes so much what they're doing, each thing they do is of great, great value. And they've changed. They've said we want to work online. They during COVID, we found that, I will never forget the visual of these children in Kashmir sitting at social distancing in a meadow and taking an online fun class with a volunteer. And one would think that it is lazy volunteering, but it's not. So I think those trends is something that we have at least seen change a lot, Rohit.
Sure. Thank you so much. When we are talking about trends in volunteering, Professor Handy, I'd like to sort of get back to you on, have you seen any perspective and approaches to volunteering shifting in response to some of the changes which have happened basically because of the COVID-19 pandemic? Have you seen a shift? And I think it'll be interesting to know your viewpoint there. And also if you could sort of also elaborate on the mental health improvement aspect which happens. So I'm just trying to club a couple of questions because I need we're running a little short of time. So I will be clubbing some questions and then trying to move this a little faster so that if there are any questions from the audience, we'll be able to take some of those questions as well. So after your answer, Professor, I'll move to Anuradha, and then if panelists have any quick important messages, they'll I'll leave the floor open for them to sort of answer give those messages, and then I'll wrap up the panel. So over to you, Professor.
Thank you. I think I'm going to go to your second question first. So I truly think, as one of our panelists said, that the person who benefits most is the volunteer. I've seen that over and over and over again in all my research, all my experiences. The research, and there are about 250 citations I can provide you for what I'm going to say now. There are great psychological benefits of volunteering. We know that happiness increases when people volunteer. And when we do these studies, we control for everything. We control for age, for education, income, social status, previous health conditions. We control for everything. So even controlling for that, we know that people who volunteer are happier individuals. They have greater life satisfaction over their life course. So whether it is a student or a senior or anybody in between volunteering, they're much more likely to report that they're satisfied with their lives. As you have seen in your own report, self-esteem goes up, and volunteers report this over and over again on many indices of self-esteem, that self-esteem goes up. So psychological well-being goes up dramatically. What's very interesting is that health benefits also go up. So it's not just mental health, but also physical health benefits. We know that cardiovascular health improves for people who volunteer, for example. The mortality risk, so the risk of dying, goes down by 47% for volunteers. The stress hormones go down. People report less, who are depressed, report less depressive symptoms when they volunteer. The host of mental and physical health benefits of just going down. And there are many mechanisms for this, because mostly volunteering gets you out of your own life, your own problems, your own work constraints into somebody else's sphere, and you feel that you can contribute. So there are many ways why you feel self-satisfied. Now that we do some MRI images of what's going on in the brain, we know that by volunteering and helping others, it relieves your own stress hormones. You are now out of your own sphere of worrying about your own problems, thinking about other people's problems and contributing to it. So it's not surprising that there are many physical and psychological benefits to volunteering. So if you're not convinced on that, there is also a lot of literature that shows the economic benefits. So if you're interested in your financial well-being and your economic well-being, we know that volunteers are more likely to go to college. They're more likely to have higher education and higher incomes, controlling for everything else. So why? Well, the mechanisms are, it's when you get a job, it's not what you know, it's often whom you know and what your social networks are. Your social networks are increasing when you volunteer. Not only that, your skills are developing, your leadership skills are developing, as all of you have mentioned in you're becoming empathic leaders, as Balakumar mentioned. So all of these are giving a contribution to your increasing networks. And so we're not surprised that people who volunteer have higher incomes than people who don't. Now, you might wonder whether the relationship is causal or it's the other way around. But a lot of literature that has followed people over their life courses have found that it's volunteering that gives rise to this. And one of the most recent researches that we did, which I think you'll find very interesting, is based on the fact that we found that what is we call a good-looking giver effect. We find that people who are likely to volunteer and give are generally better looking than those who don't. Now, we didn't say it was a causal link, but we followed people from high school onwards, and we found that people who rated them as good looking in their high school pictures were more likely to volunteer and give. And then we looked at their pictures, and the person who's rating them has no idea of their volunteering or giving behavior, and rates those people good looking as those who are volunteering and giving. So there is even a very surprising effect that we don't expect, that people who are givers tend to shine from inside. There is something very attractive about their personalities. And we found this by following people from high school on to this. And more recently, another research did experimental work to show the causality between this good-looking giver effect. So there is an old saying by a Greek philosopher, he who is fair to look upon is good, and he who is good will soon be fair also. So there is a big relationship between being good looking and being a giver, both of time and money. So maybe I will cut this a little bit short over here because you're running
Great.
out of time, but there are
Thank you.
many
Thank you so much, Professor Handi, for those, extremely interesting insights. And we all hope to be better looking soon and wealthier as well. Wonderful to hear the insights from you. Anuradha, may I move toward the last question? And also, any insights that you have. What is the role of media? I mean, in all of this, do you feel that media can play a larger part in volunteering? And what has been your experience? And we all know that volunteering has also been an under-researched sort of sector. So can media help in helping volunteering in any way? Please do answer this question, and any other thoughts, so that we can sort of move towards the end of the panel and see if we can answer a few questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rohit. And I'll keep it short, right? I believe that media has taken strides in promoting in promoting volunteering among Indians. But let's be honest, it's only halfway there, right? Traditional media often covers philanthropy through a lens of crisis. If there are some natural disasters or large-scale protests or some celebrity endorsements, it gets the eye of the media. But other than that, while these stories do matter, they rarely delve into the everyday acts of volunteering that quietly transform communities, which is what we should really be talking about, right? I think the Better India started from this very, very strong feeling or that we had about talking about the small initiatives, the small changes that can cumulatively add up, right? And that's digital platforms like us, we are trying to do a better job of democratizing narratives, right? For instance, at the Better India, we've consistently showcased grassroots change makers whose efforts might otherwise go unnoticed, right? What we like to call our unsung heroes. And we do believe that volunteers are the quintessential unsung heroes, right? Stories like a teenager running free evening classes for underserved children, or even people just volunteering time to help their the children of their helpers or anybody in their education and things like that. They matter because they are so much more relatable and human, right? So what the media sometimes forgets is that inspiration is only half of the equation. The other half is action. And when stories are paired with clear calls to action, like here's how you can help, They move from being just inspirational to actionable. And that is the holy grail, where you're able to leave people with very actionable points. This is what somebody has done. Tell a story which is very, human and relatable, which people can feel a connection with, and then leave people with, here's how you can help. Here's somebody like you who is doing something, with their own constraints of time, of money, of whatever it is. So they are so much, they're so similar to you, but they have managed to do something that is, helping society, helping the environment in whatever way they are, making a difference. And here's how you can do something similar, or you can help their cause scale up, and so many different ways in which you can, help others or be supportive. So this is where I feel media still has room to grow, by closing the loop between storytelling and enabling participation, right? And the one thing that we should remember is that media has a superpower. It has the power to normalize behaviors. So when media takes on the mantle of talking about something on a regular basis, it can shift, for instance, about volunteering. If it were to talk more often and normalize it, it could shift the behavior, of people from considering volunteering an occasional activity to a regular habit, a lifestyle choice rather than a one-off, act of generosity, right? So for this, what we can do, I mean, the role that media could and should play is, adopting a three-pronged approach, where firstly, it can offer resources and roadmaps, because I believe that many people do not volunteer because they don't know where to start. Normally, if you ask people, are you volunteering? They will say, we don't know what to do. We don't know who to trust. We don't know much about, how to even get started. So media platforms should serve as bridges, curating lists of volunteering opportunities and making participation as easy as perhaps just clicking a button. Right. For example, at the Better India, we once featured an app that connects people to 15-minute volunteering tasks, like tutoring over a call. Now, these bite-sized, what Bala also called micro volunteering opportunity, right? These kind of small commitments can become the gateways to long-term engagement, right? Secondly, media could lead the way by showcasing the impact, because at a very basic level, people need to see the outcomes of their actions, right? That is a dopamine hit when you're able to see that something, a small act that you did led to a change in someone's life, or overall, like, what kind of impact did it had. If we are able to use data, visuals, and testimonials to illustrate how a few hours of volunteering every day, every week, every month can outward to transform lives, it can be a really huge motivator. Thirdly, celebrating our volunteers as heroes. Like I said, I think our volunteers are the true quintessential unsung heroes. If we could start campaigns to spotlight volunteers as role models, not just once in a year like International Volunteer Day, but all year round, we could really spark a friendly competition, admiration, and aspiration among people to become volunteers on a regular basis, right? So I think ultimately media must evolve from simply telling stories to catalyzing movements. And as we have learned at the Better India, people are eager to help when they know that their contribution matters and when they're guided to take that first step. Right. So with collective effort, I think we can elevate volunteering from a noble exception to a norm. Like, let's instead of asking how was your weekend, if we can say how are you volunteering this week, it's just changing the narrative completely. So I feel media can definitely play a very, very important role in normalizing volunteering as a behavior change.
Wonderful, Anuradha. That's lovely. And I'll just request. I think we are already at 5:30. There are some questions coming in, but we'll park those questions and try and sort of answer, them, a little later. But I just like to quickly give, say a minute each to the other panelists. I know Anuradha has done a bit of a wrap up, given her views. So I'll first request, Pooja, if you can sort of give, a short message, to all of us, anything that you want to kind of emphasize. Please restrict it to a couple of minutes. And then I'll request Bala, and then, we'll close with Professor Handy. A minute each. And thank you so much. I think it's been a wonderful, engaging discussion. And once we wrap up this discussion, I'll pass it over to Anupama, to give the audience a feel for where they can download the report. So a minute each. Pooja, over to you.
Thank you, Rohit. I think all I can say is share stories of people who, a 29-year-old who came in, said, I'm a working professional, I just have time to help you compile data. And he helped us compile data for a period chain campaign and discovered that I have made multiplier effect of what I did, because that campaign reached 25,000 children. And actually discovering how powerful a skilled and very small for him volunteering could actually make. And to me, that's the appeal to, I think, everybody, that should become part of our lives. That what I can do, I must do. As our founder said, maybe it is micro volunteering right now. Maybe it's amazing, committed volunteer who works every weekend. But I think it is something that will change your life. And I think the professor has left us with lots of food for thought on that. Thank you.
Bala, over to you. You had some things that you wanted to share with us.
Yeah. One formula to all the listeners and all the people who would like to do. I've learned this from an organization called I Volunteer. So there is a journey. Volunteering a journey is a pyramid. Like I said, like not everybody knows when to give, where to give, and how to give, right? The first level, the bottom of the pyramid is exposure. That's what Anuradha is also was telling. Exposure is the first thing that we need to give to everybody while you are here. It could be a college, or it could be in a higher education, corporate, or like homemaker or senior citizen. What all you can do is the exposure. Second level of that pyramid is experience. The moment you give exposure, you need to give experience to them. Unless you give experience, nothing moves. So the moment you give a micro or like macro experience, the third level comes empathy. So people from sympathy to they move on to empathy. The moment empathy comes, the fourth level of the pyramid, that's engaging. So they'll become engaging with you. They'll start engaging with volunteering. And once they start engaging, the pinnacle of the pyramid, they become evangelists. So I'm an evangelist right now. I started as a volunteer over weekend. Right now, I head the volunteering program for Cognizant India, and I go and evangelize to everybody, promote volunteering. So exposure, experience, and empathy, engage, and evangelize. So this journey, people could be somewhere here and there. If we follow these steps right, everybody in this world has the heart, and they will start volunteering. And this is something that we follow, and we have been seeing successful in the corporate. We don't have a volunteering time off, but it's culturally driven. We just invoke the intrinsic volunteering within every individual. Once again, big thanks to CRY and GT for putting up this fantastic event. A lot of learnings and a lot of insights, and thank you once again, and happy International Volunteering Day tomorrow. May this tomorrow become everyday volunteering for everybody of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Professor Handy, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Well, I'm delighted to be part of this panel and learn from everybody what's going on in India. It's fascinating. I come to India on a regular basis, but mostly to Karnataka, and I haven't come. There's so many places I'd love to visit. Growing up, so I feel like an insider outsider because I grew up in India till I went to college, and then I moved away. And I remember that the word volunteering didn't really exist when I was growing up, which might tell you how old I am, but what it was called was social work. So my mother did social work, my aunts did social work, and it was called volunteering. To see how volunteering has developed over time in India, how it formalized it's become, how people are recognizing and appreciating is immense pleasure to me. I also realize, and I have a book on global philanthropy, that people all around the world are the same. We want to help, we sympathize, we have empathy for, and we want to help others. And in India, this is seva. This was the first idea of seva, which is ingrained, I think, in the DNA in India. And so that you get all these numbers in volunteering is not a surprise to me. That we are now recognizing, and GT and CRY are making it visible, is immensely important, because the world looks at India. It's a leading democracy in India. And what are people doing in India? So this report will be extremely influential going forward. And I hope that you will continue doing work along finding out how people give, volunteer, give money, and so on. So I think this report is going to be the start, I hope, of a very influential track of what GT and CRY will continue doing. So thank you again for doing this. And one last word, ask your friends to volunteer, to come with you. That's the easy way to get people to volunteer, because people are very anxious about going on their own. So we find one way to get people volunteering, those people who say we don't know where to go, is find somebody who has never volunteered and say, come with me. When people who are socially anxious or just don't know what to do, don't mind going with friends. And we find that going with friends increases volunteering substantially. So that was just my one last comment on how to increase volunteering amongst those who don't volunteer. So
Great.
thank you again
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A big shout out to all our panelists, Professor Handy, Anuradha, Balakumar, and Pooja, of course. Thank you so much. Over to you, Anupama.
Okay, so on behalf of CRY and GT, I extend a heartfelt gratitude to everyone present today. Slightly overstepped time, but I think it was so very rich that we did not mind. So very special thanks to our esteemed panelists for their precious time and insights, to Rohit for moderating the panel so beautifully, and to all of you for being part of this enriching experience. The quality of questions, there were many questions coming in, and we would really hope to come back with our responses, because there were a lot of questions about how do I get started, what more that we can get information on. So we would try our best to answer those very shortly. But the quality of questions, the richness of perspectives being offered, shared by our audience, by our panelists, they reflect this deep passion and commitment in the room. So, of course, I think many of you were saying this event has been our symbolic offering ahead of International Volunteer Day tomorrow, celebrating the incredible spirit of volunteerism. At CRY, we actually envision a world where volunteering becomes a second nature, where we are all sort of naturally wired to act for change. So this study we have shared today, along with the existing and evolving powerful efforts by people and organizations, aims to inspire further volunteering actions and collaboration. So we are deeply value the time you have spent with us this evening. We warmly invite you to read the full report, the link to which is in the chat box. So please have a look there. Stay in touch with ongoing conversations, and of course, please remember to take a minute to fill out the feedback form. Once you exit the event, it will pop up. So it really helps us grow and improve. Big gratitude once again to our phenomenal panelists and to each one of you who made time today. Take care, stay safe, and keep doing the wonderful, good, and inspiring work that makes a difference. Thank you so much.
Annapurna, I can't somehow copy emails from the chat. Is it possible to send me the emails of all the panelists?
Surely, surely, Professor Handy. I will share
Thank
with you very shortly.
It was a pleasure. So-
Such a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great evening ahead.
I think we could have carried on for another half an hour. The
Yeah,
people are
Yeah,
just
yeah,
moving
yeah.
out.
I was
There's still
able
100
to.
and 100.
There are still so many people. So I think
People,
all
yeah,
credit
yeah,
to
yeah.
Anuradha, Professor Handy, Bala, Pooja, Rohit.
Yeah,
you.
I would have still loved to go on for a little longer. There's so many, such good insights and trends, etc. I could have just carried on for a bit longer.